Welcome to the deep dive. So you're thinking about that big leap starting your own small business. That's fantastic. And you've pointed us to a really solid resource, Steps to Small Business Startup by Pinson and Jeanette.
Right.
Our plan for this deep dive is basically to pull out the absolute must-knows from the book, give you a clear path without you getting, totally bogged down in every single page. Kind of an express guide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a hefty book. It covers, well, pretty much everything from the first glimmer of an idea right through to the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
But for today, we really want to zoom in on those crucial first steps, the stuff that really sets the foundation for everything else. We're aiming for clarity and direction, right?
Definitely. Okay, so where does this whole journey usually kick off? The book suggests, maybe counterintuitively, looking inwards first.
It does, yeah. Look at yourself. It actually makes a lot of sense. Your best ideas often come from what you already love doing or what you're good at.
Like hobbies and things.
Hobbies, volunteer work, leisure time. The book mentions examples like specialty foods if you're a great cook, or tutoring if you know a subject inside out, or even like organizing services if you're that super tidy person.
Right. Tapping into existing passions?
And your skills, too. That's key. The book really stresses that specialized knowledge or technical skills, well, they can be a fantastic starting point.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. If you write well, maybe freelance writing or even tackling a book, got deep knowledge, seminars, workshops, tech skills. Website development seems, well, obvious.
Right. It's about leveraging what you've already got.
Yeah, see where that overlaps with what people might actually need.
And to help with that self-assessment, the book's got this personal assessment worksheet 1. It sounds pretty structured.
It is. It prompts you to list skills like, are you organized? Good with computers. Writing. Public speaking. Communication, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Then interests, sports, fishing, reading, outdoors, whatever. And even personal qualities, enjoy meeting people.
Yeah.
Independent, confident, good work ethic.
It digs pretty deep.
Yeah, and then it tries to connect those. So their example, organized, likes computers, into sports, suggests things like a sporting goods store, maybe teaching classes, leading tours, writing a sports column.
So it helps you brainstorm based on who you are.
Exactly. Have you listening actually done that? Really sat down and taken stock? It's easy to chase what seems like a good idea, but aligning with your strengths, that's huge for motivation.
Totally agree. And building on that, there's worksheet 2. This one sounds a bit more critical.
It is. It pushes you on strengths, maybe retail experience, management skills, customer service know-how, but importantly, weaknesses too.
Ah, the tricky part.
Right. Like maybe you don't know much about business finance, or you just plain dislike doing the books, or marketing isn't your thing.
Okay.
But the useful bit is it makes you think about actions to fix those weaknesses and estimate the cost and time. So weak on finance, maybe take an accounting course. Costs $150, takes 6 weeks, 4 hours a week. That kind of practical planning.
Facing the gaps early. That sounds smart.
It really is. It's not failure, it's being realistic. You figure out if you need to learn something or maybe plan to get help later.
And then the really big reality check. Money. Does the idea actually support your life?
The personal monthly expense worksheet. You've got to know exactly how much income that business needs to generate just for you to live. Your baseline.
Minimum target. Right.
Precisely. If the idea, especially early on, can't hit that number, well, you might need to rethink, scale back, get a side hustle going, or just reassess if it's feasible right now. It grounds the dream in reality.
Okay. Very important. So ideas are simmering. You've done some self-assessment. Next up, market research.
Absolutely critical.
Yeah.
The book really hammers this home. Is anyone actually going to buy what you're selling?
Yeah.
And who else is already out there doing it? Your competition.
Right. How do you even start with that?
The book splits it neatly into 2 types. First, secondary data. This is the info that's already out there.
Like government stats and industry reports.
Exactly. General economic trends, demographics, stuff from associations. It gives you the big picture of the environment you're thinking of entering.
And the book mentions some big trends back then: tech, e-commerce, global connections, the aging boomer market, stuff that affects almost everyone.
Yeah, those macro trends. Then you get to primary data. This is the research you do. Talking to potential customers, watching the market yourself.
Okay, getting your hands dirty?
Pretty much. And analyzing competition, the book says, look at 3 things. Direct competitors who do basically the same thing.
Like another coffee shop on the same street.
Right. Then indirect competitors, different product, same need. Like maybe a tea shop nearby satisfies that same nice drink break need.
Ah, okay, makes sense.
And just observing customers. What do they actually want? How do they behave?
So how do you gather that primary data? Surveys?
Questionnaires are a big one, yeah.
Yeah.
The book even has templates, like one for Ace Sporting Goods and sample questionnaires for products versus services.
Oh, examples are helpful.
Definitely. They show you the kinds of questions you need to ask. Is there interest? What features matter? What would people pay? It makes it less abstract. Seeing it applied to a specific, albeit hypothetical, business like Ace Sporting Goods.
Right. You can see how they tailor questions for fishing trips versus just selling gear.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just writing questions. It talks about coding the answers.
Coding? What's that?
Basically organizing the responses so you can actually see patterns. The book mentions a questionnaire coding log for Ace Sporting Goods. It's about making sense of the data you collect.
Gotcha. Not just collecting forms.
Right. The whole point is to deeply understand your target market. There's a target market worksheet example, too.
Who does that cover?
Synthesizing everything you found. Demographics, age, income, lifestyle, where they live, shop, their specific needs, your business needs, their buying habits, getting that crystal clear picture.
That sounds incredibly useful for, well, everything else. Marketing, product development.
Absolutely essential. And there's another worksheet example, the market research worksheet, which helps analyze responses to specific product questions.
Like, how many people actually want those guided fishing trips from Ace Sporting Goods?
Yeah, and what price works, which age group is keenest. It lets you really evaluate if specific offerings are viable.
So, the message is loud and clear. Don't skimp on the research.
Please don't. It validates your idea, helps you know your customer, spots problems early. It's the foundation.
Okay, foundation laid. What about giving the business an identity, a name and a place to operate?
Right. The book covers choosing a name, making sure it reflects your image, and is easy for people to remember. And importantly, consider your target market when brainstorming.
Makes sense. And checking if the name's actually free.
Crucial practical step. Check phone directories, city or county licensing offices, state registration records. Do that homework early. Saves so much hassle.
Good tip. And location. The book mentions GIS.
Yeah, geographic information systems. Basically, using smart mapping tools to analyze potential spots, customer access, parking. What other businesses are nearby? Does the location make strategic sense for your customers?
And if you're leasing a space. Lots to think about there, I imagine.
Definitely. The book highlights key lease terms, like how rent is calculated, triple net, double net, gross lease.
Yeah.
Basically, who pays for taxes, insurance, maintenance, big cost implications.
Oh, yeah, that could add up.
And things like subletting options, who pays for improvements you make, insurance requirements, all important details.
Yeah, now what about starting from home? That seems really common now.
Very common. The book covers the pros, like low overhead and flexibility, and the cons, like isolation or work blurring into home life.
Finding that balance.
Yeah, it stresses having a dedicated workspace and keeping set business hours. Boundaries are key. Protect your personal time, minimize distractions.
Sounds easier said than done sometimes.
It can be. There's even a little checklist in the book. Check zoning laws. Have self-discipline, set hours, dedicated space, maybe even dress the part. Get tech support sorted, and definitely check your insurance.
Insurance is a big one for home businesses, right? Don't assume your homeowners covers it.
Absolutely don't assume that. You likely need extra coverage. The book also warns about certain tax deduction myths for home businesses. Some things just aren't deductible. It points to IRS publication 587 and a flow chart called Can You Deduct Business Use of Home Expenses? Worth looking up.
Good to know. Okay, shifting gears a bit. The legal structure. That sounds intimidating.
It can feel that way. The book breaks down the main options. Sole proprietorship, simple, but you're personally liable.
Meaning your personal assets are at risk if the business...
They're separate legal entities. Good for limiting liability, easier to transfer ownership, maybe easier to get funding, but more complex rules, potentially higher taxes.
And there are variations, right? S Corp, LLC.
Yep. S Corp lets profits pass through to owners' personal income, avoiding corporate tax rates. LLCs, limited liability companies, aim for that liability protection, like a corporation, but with simpler taxes, more like a partnership.
So how do you choose?
The book says consider things like how much risk is involved in your business. Do you need it to continue if something happens to you? Will you need outside investment? How complex will management be? What are your long-term goals?
It's definitely not one size fits all.
Not at all. You really need to weigh the pros and cons for your situation. The book wisely suggests checking official resources like business.gov and irs.gov for current, detailed info.
Okay, so legal structure sorted. What about how the business looks? Branding.
Right. Presenting your business. Graphic identity matters, logo, colors, fonts, that first impression.
The book uses Ace Sporting Goods again.
Yeah, it shows how their business card design evolved as their research pointed them towards fly fishing and guided trips. It shows how branding might shift as you clarify your focus.
So it's not just about looking pretty, it connects to strategy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's more than just cards thinking about all your promotional materials, having a consistent look and feel.
Makes sense. Now, legal protections. What does the book cover there?
Several things. Keeping detailed journals of business activities. Using a disclosure letter if you're sharing sensitive ideas.
Okay. Documentation.
And intellectual property, copyright for creative works, trademark for your brand name and logo, patents for inventions, and of course, contracts. Formalizing agreements in writing is crucial.
Basic legal hygiene for a business.
Pretty much. The book gives an overview, but stresses for anything complex, talk to a lawyer, get proper legal advice.
Good advice. What about the bureaucratic stuff? Licenses and permits.
Ah, yes, the red tape, often required at local, state, and federal levels. It really depends on your business type and location. You have to investigate.
So more homework.
Afraid so. The book also covers registering a fictitious business name, a DBA, doing business as. That's if you operate under a name that's not your legal personal name or official company name.
Like Jane Smith doing business as Coastal Creations.
Exactly. You usually file it locally, and sometimes you even have to publish a notice about it in the paper. The book shows examples of the forms.
Okay. And if you're selling physical products, there's a permit for that.
Yes, a seller's permit, sometimes called a resale license. That's what allows you to collect sales tax from customers.
And then you have to send that tax money to the state, right?
Correct. You collect it, then remit it. The book warns against misusing the permit, like buying personal stuff tax-free claiming it's for resale. That's a big no-no.
Understood. It also has a flow chart for sales tax.
Yeah, a visual guide to the process. And an example of a resale certificate, which you'd give suppliers when buying goods you plan to resell, so you don't pay sales tax on them initially.
Right, avoids double taxation. Okay, money management basics. Banking.
Big point in the book. Keep business and personal finances completely separate bank accounts. It makes tracking everything so much easier, especially for taxes and just knowing if you're making money.
Seems obvious, but probably easy to let slide at first.
Very easy. When choosing a bank, the book says consider things like your relationship with the staff. Do they have SBA loan programs? Are they stable? Branch locations, hours, fees?
Fees are a big one for business accounts.
They can be. Also, do they offer merchant services for credit cards? Good online banking. There's a worksheet in the book to help compare banks.
Useful. Now, insurance. We touched on home business insurance, but what about general business insurance?
Absolutely essential.
Yeah.
Protects you from potentially crippling financial losses. The book outlines the main types. Property and liability is a big category.
Covering what?
General liability for injuries on premises, damage to your property, fire, theft, product liability if your product hurts someone, workers' comp for employees.
Wow, okay.
Also, business interruption insurance covers lost income if you have to close temporarily. Vehicle insurance if you use cars for business. Umbrella insurance for extra liability coverage.
That's a lot. And life and health.
Yeah, touches on that too. Life insurance, disability insurance for the owner, employee benefits, group plans, retirement programs, even insurance to cover overhead if you're temporarily disabled.
So the key is figuring out what your specific business really needs.
Exactly. Assessing your risks and getting the necessary coverage, plus maybe some desirable extras. There's an insurance fact sheet in the book summarizing these.
Okay. Moving into the digital realm, the internet. Obviously huge now.
Indispensable. The book covers its value for communication, research, and increasingly sales. Basics like getting connected, choosing an ISP.
And professional email.
Yes. Stresses setting up a proper business email address. Looks much more credible. It also mentions using search engines lists some older ones, but the principle holds and industry-specific websites for research.
What about forums, news groups?
Yeah, it mentions news groups, basically online forums for discussions and info gathering in your niche. And of course, the potential for buying and selling online, which has exploded since the book came out.
And the big question, do you need a website?
The book raises that. Factors to consider. Who are your customers? What do you want the site to do? Just info or e-commerce? And what are the costs involved?
It's a strategic decision, not just a given.
Right. Okay, let's talk financing. Always a major topic.
The big questions. How much do you need? Where do you get it? What will it cost?
Those are the core questions the book tackles. And it strongly emphasizes you need a solid business plan to get funding from almost anywhere external.
Makes sense. What are the sources it suggests?
Starts with personal funds, then friends and family, Then traditional lenders like banks, again, need that plan.
And SBA loans.
Yes, it details several SBA programs of the 7A guarantee, low doc, SBA Express, microloans, the 504 program. These can be really helpful, especially if banks say no initially.
What about investors?
Briefly discusses equity financing, selling ownership stakes to venture capitalists or angel investors. And it touches on factors affecting the cost of financing, like interest rates and fees.
Got it. So once you're up and running, keeping track of the money, bookkeeping.
Absolutely vital. Good records are crucial for managing finances day to day and for taxes. You can't manage what you don't measure.
How often should you be doing bookkeeping tasks?
The book suggests a schedule. Daily things like mail, payables, receivables, inventory checks. Weekly things like recording income, deposits, paying invoices, petty cash.
And monthly.
Bank reconciliation, reviewing statements and balances. Then end-of-year tasks. Final tallies, cash flow analysis, preparing for taxes.
The book has templates for these records too, right? Using Ace Sporting Goods again?
Yes, lots of examples. Revenue and expense journal, petty cash, inventory records, fixed assets log, accounts payable, accounts receivable, mileage log, entertainment expenses, balance sheet, profit and loss statement.
Seeing those examples must make it much clearer what's needed.
Definitely. And the book strongly recommends using accounting software to make it all easier and less error-prone.
Good call. Now, a really critical piece, cash flow. The book calls it out specifically.
Huge emphasis. Success or failure often depends on cash flow. It's the lifeblood.
So what exactly is a cash flow statement?
It's a tool to project the cash coming in and going out over a period. Helps you anticipate shortfalls or surpluses.
What goes into it?
Sources cash, starting cash, sales revenue, miscellaneous income, selling assets, borrowing money, owner investments. Uses of cash, startup costs, inventory buying, selling expenses, fixed expenses like rent, buying long-term assets, paying back loans, owner withdrawals.
Sounds complex to track.
It can be. The book has worksheets, cash to be paid out, sources of cash, and an example pro forma cash flow statement for the first couple of months. It shows how you project your ending cash balance.
And spreadsheets help.
Big time. Pre-formatted ones with calculations built in are recommended. And doing what-if scenarios. What if sales are lower? What if expenses are higher? Proactive planning.
Crucial for survival. Okay, last major section seems to be marketing, getting the word out.
Yep. And step one, always, understand your target market. Who are you trying to reach? Everything flows from that.
The book mentions place in marketing.
Yeah, that's about your distribution channels. How do you get your product or service to the customer? Retail, online, direct.
And it has another action plan example.
Yes, a marketing action plan for Ace Sporting Goods. Sets clear objectives like increase revenue from fishing trips, increase gear sales, then strategies, specific tactics like newspaper ads or in-store demos, and how they'll evaluate if it worked, track signups, track coupon use.
Very structured. What about advertising options?
Covers a range. Newspapers, broad reach, short life. Magazines, targeted, longer life. Radio, local, needs frequency. TV, wide reach, expensive. Direct mail can be personalized, costly.
Yeah.
Yellow pages, local search. Outdoor ads, transit ads.
And websites, obviously.
Absolutely critical promotional tool now. The book also mentions publicity and PR press releases, community involvement, building reputation beyond paid ads.
Yeah. Networking, word of mouth.
Touches on those too. Still incredibly powerful. The advice is to develop an overall advertising plan, and it even gives resources for finding media contacts.
Okay, wow. That's a lot of ground covered from that book.
It really is a comprehensive guide to those initial stages.
So just to recap quickly for everyone listening, we started with finding ideas within yourself, your skills, your passions.
So the absolute necessity of market research, validating the idea, understanding customers, and competition.
Choosing a name, finding a location, understanding leases, or setting up effectively if you're home-based.
Navigating the legal structures, sole proprietor, partnership, LLC, corporation, and picking the right fit.
Projecting a professional image with branding, and protecting your ideas and assets legally with things like trademarks and contracts.
Then the practicalities, getting the right licenses and permits, like seller's permit if needed, setting up separate banking.
Getting the right insurance coverage, property, liability, maybe others depending on your business.
Leveraging the internet effectively for communication, research, maybe sales. Planning your financing strategy.
And the ongoing discipline of good bookkeeping and, crucially, managing your cash flow.
Finishing up with understanding your market deeply so you can develop effective marketing and promotion plans.
It's a solid roadmap for those first, often overwhelming steps. This deep dive really just scratched the surface of the detail in the book, though.
Absolutely. We've given the overview, the framework, but digging back into steps to small business startup for specifics on areas where you need more depth is definitely recommended.
Right. So, final thought for everyone listening today, based on everything we've unpacked. As you consider launching your own business, thinking through all these initial stages, what single aspect feels like your strongest suit right now? Where do you feel most prepared? And on the flip side, what area jumps out as needing the most focus, the most learning, the most sheer effort from you as you move forward? Something to really mull over as you take your next steps.